Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I wanted to read from a meditation book today. I was like sitting around. It is a beautiful fall day outside. Blue skies, the leaves are blowing in the wind. It is absolutely beautiful outside. And I wanted to do a meditation from one of my mom's favorite meditation books. And that is the book, The Soul's Companion. This is by the same author that I read from the other day. I actually bought this book for my mom years and years and years ago. If you've watched my videos for a long time, what you'll know is that my mom would always like write little notes in the sides of books, and she would underline things. And so I was going through here and I was kind of like just flipping through to see like if you could see where she'd underlined things on, you know, different the void, she underlined a lot. Suffering, she underlined a lot. And so I kind of wanted to just read one of the meditations that she had underlined from August 16th, and it's called Alone in the Presence of the Self. Now, I will tell you that this book goes a little deeper. It's not so much just told in layman's terms, but I read it, a little bit of it, and I didn't read the whole thing, because I like to read them on here on camera and kind of have a response to it. I wanted to read it, but when I started reading, I was like, wow, like that's kind of really, when I talk about meditation, like what I do on a daily basis. And what I've done a lot of, I would say in the last, couple days. Alone in the presence of the self. When I do not allow myself the time to develop an inner relationship with my own soul, I leave myself open to countless maladies. I am alone in the presence of myself. Being alone in the presence of self is the worst kind of aloneness. There is something very disturbing about not being able to be comfortable with my own insides. The reason that a process of inspection is so vital on the road toward self is just this. When I sit quietly with myself, all of the unfinished business, old hurts, and unquenched longings begin to rumble around and make themselves felt to me. If I cannot sit through this process of feeling my painful feelings, sorting through them, and resolving them, I really cannot sit with myself, because sitting with myself is too painful. When I have sorted out the problem and learned methods of sitting with inner pain, I am able to sit through these feelings so that I can eventually get to serenity in self. And underneath serenity in self, she has it like outlined really big. I am willing to sit with all of who I am. And then the quote is by Paul Tillich: neurosis is the way of avoiding non-being by avoiding being. And I think it's a really important meditation. And if you really break it down, what it's saying is that for all of us, okay, whether you find that, in a church or a temple, finding quiet time, or in some kind of meditative state, or like myself, driving around with the windows open and no music on. I do this quite a bit, and I've talked about this on my vlog, but my friends are always like, they'll get in the car and they're like, you don't have any station to, I'm like, no. And they're like, you don't listen to music? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes. Like today, I was jamming out to Kylie Minogue, I was jamming, I loved it. But there are other times that I need to be very quiet and very still. And earlier today, before I started jamming out to the music, I went and I got my coffee and I was driving around. And I was kind of just like looking at the day, and I was just kind of in my head speaking to my higher power. And, that for me is a meditative state of kind of looking at my life, where I'm at today, who I was, how far I've come, am I a different person today? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? And it's important for me to take inventory of my life on a daily basis, to take a look at where I am at that point in my life, what I could do better, what I need to achieve to be a better version of myself. And if you watch my videos, I say on here all the time that my aim every day is to just be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. And so I can't do that if I'm not doing some introspection on my life, if I'm not actually taking a look at myself. And that doesn't always have to be with a counselor or a therapist or a sponsor or, a friend. Yeah, I use all of that. But sometimes the best introspection, which is basically the word, is when I'm just sitting by myself, still and quiet. I do not love being outside, okay, unless it's in a swimming pool or on a beach. But I have a lot of friends of mine that love to hike. And they always talk about like being one with nature, or I have like a lot of hippie friends, okay? And they love just like being outside and being one with nature. And I have this friend of mine, and very sad, he went back out and he's still using, I pray for him to figure it out one of these days. But I learned a lot of lessons from this man. And, you know, several years ago, we were having like this, it was like it was sometime in the summer. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and there was like this stream of shooting stars. I don't know if you guys are from the Midwest or if you remember. I guess it wouldn't even matter if it was just from the Midwest. But it was like this 2 or 3 days where there were like a lot of shooting stars. And so he was like, we're going to go with some other people in recovery, and we're going to go out in the country, and we're just going to be out there by these cornfields, and we're going to watch the shooting stars. And I was so resistant to it because I was just like, you know, I don't like to be out in nature. Put me on a cornfield in the middle of nowhere at like 2 o'clock in the morning. That scares the shit out of me. He was like, you're going to be fine. There's like 6 of us, right? So I went out there. We met with these people. It's like this one couple. They had their chairs set up. They're like 60, you know? They had their chairs set up to look at the things. And we had brought like a, you know, blanket. And we were like laying down. And I even told my husband, he was like, you're going to go out and look at shooting stars or falling stars, shooting stars. And I was like, yeah, I need to make lots of wishes, you know? And he kind of thought that was funny and cute, you know? But anyway, I remember we were laying out there, and we're like in this like road came to like a dead end, and then there was like cornfields all around it, and we're laying like on the pavement. And at first I was kind of like just, you know, scared. And then I just lay there on this blanket, and I was just like looking up, and I saw one, and I was like, oh my God, there it is. Like I saw one, you know? And when you grow up in the city, you don't see shooting stars, you don't see stars a lot, you know? It's like at night on my vlog, I drive around a lot, and I look out in the country, and you know, and it's like I can see the Big Dipper always. Like that's the only one I really know, and the North Star. So I see it, and I see it up there, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the Big Dipper. And when you're out in the country or when you're, you know, in an isolated area, stars are really bright. But I was sitting out there, and I was looking at these stars, and you know, and we saw a lot of shooting stars that night. It was several. And what it made me realize sitting there was how really small I am in the grand scheme of things, you know? And it really humbled me, this sitting there and just watching this shooting star, these beautiful stars. I could see every star in the sky that night, it seemed like, you know? And it was like they just like were right up there for me to touch. But really what it did was it really humbled my human experience. You know, and it brought me back to what I learned from my mother when she passed away, that we're born, we live, we die, and what we do with the middle of it is ours. That's, you know, ours. And, you know, are you going to learn from the things that you've done? Are you going to just stay stagnant? What are you going to do with your life? You know, are you going to chase your dreams? Are you going to, you know, try to be in healthy relationships? Are you going to have the best life that you can possibly have? Or are you just going to whine and be miserable for the rest of your life? And it's all a choice, you know? And when I sat there and I watched these shooting stars, I don't know why, but it reminded me of that moment, my mom's passing, when I realized that. And, you know, I felt very small at that moment. I felt very small in the world. And I had seen years ago, I think it's either Stephen Hawking or Carl Sagan, I think it's Stephen Hawking, did this series called Aliens or something. It was on Netflix at the time. It's like a 3-part series. Or maybe it's called The Universe. I can't remember. But it's a 3-part series, and the first part is about aliens. And when it starts, it shows like New York City, and then it pans back, and it shows like from the moon what the Earth looks like. And then it pans back, and it shows like, you know, what the moon, the sun, all this kind of stuff, the planets, and it keeps on going back and back and back and back. And what you realize, and it kind of scares me to watch some of that stuff sometimes, because my human existence tells me I'm very important at times, and that's ego and pride driven, you know, when the reality is I'm not important at all. I'm really not. And, you know, what I, you know, do with my life is important to me. But there's so many other people and things and animals and creatures out there in the world that I'm just one part of all of that. And I need to remember that. And I remember that night, you know, laying there on the pavement, the hot pavement, because it was like August or whatever. I do remember it was like hot pavement. And on this blanket, and just looking up at the stars, I realized how truly small I am in the grand scheme of things. And it humbled me. And it really humbled me. And I have to be reminded of these things. But if I don't take moments to myself, and I don't go inside and I don't dig and take a look at that shit that's painful, that stuff that I'm not proud of, those things that, you know, I need to work on, and I'm never willing to sit there for a moment. Have you ever met somebody that just can't be still for 2 seconds? Like they just can't, you know? And when you grow up in chaos and toxicity, you learn to be busy, okay? You learn to be very busy. Because the more you are busy, the more you can kind of avoid what's really going on right in front of your face. But through the last couple years, you know, I came back into the rooms of recovery. There was like 4 years that I wasn't going to meetings, and I talk about this in my vlog all the time, that I had no emotional sobriety during that period of my life. It was a very unhealthy part of my life. And I actually just figured it out the other day, because my friend last night celebrated 2 years of sobriety, and I came in when he had 3 years of sobriety. I came back in. So or I came in right before that, like 6 months before that. So I've been back almost like 5 months. In January, I think it'll be 5 months, 5 years. It was 17 or 18 years I came back in to the program and started going to meetings and working on myself again. And you know, I needed that. But what I learned in the last 5, 6 years, whatever, is that I really learned to be introspective and take a look at myself and to sit down. And I call those today God moments. And even if you don't believe in God, that's fine, okay? But just moments with yourself in the universe where you just sit very still and you take inventory of who you are and what you're doing at that moment, and who you are and what you want to be, and you know what you can do to rectify situations in your life. And that's really about the best that I'm handed on a daily basis, you know? In recovery, there's something that we say, and that is that each day I wake up and all I have is a daily reprieve. And that's true, you know? And for me to go inside gets me out, you know, I have to take a look at that. But then the reverse of that, to get out of myself, get out of ego and pride, is by helping others. And that's what I've been taught as well. So I think it's a very interesting meditation. You know, I think that we have to really, I think on some level, realize how really small we are in the grand scheme of things and humble ourselves. But at the same time, and then that isolates us from the rest of the world, to take a look at ourselves and our actions and be introspective about what we want to do to improve upon. And then after that, go out and help others, because that's how we get out of ourselves. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.